Hey, greetings. Michael DDA here. Thank you for joining me. Do you know this is our 80th lesson? We started going through Torah again in July 2nd, 2022. We've been doing this almost 2 years, and we're only to Exodus 3 and 4 and 5, which we're going to go through today. Oh my, we are giving a very exhaustive study. I hope that you're listening. Even more, I hope that you're learning what Yehovah has to say in his word. You know, we miss it. We think the New Testament is Elohim's word, because that's what we've been told. It's the traditions of men. But think about it. When the Bereans in Acts were talking to, I think it was Paul and Silas, they went back and searched the scriptures to see if it was so. What scriptures did they seek? There was no New Testament. It's all about the law and the prophets. And that's why we're spending so much time on here. Paul Peter said exactly the same thing. You are deceived because you don't know Yehovah's logos, his words. The oracles of Elohim is actually what he said. You don't know the oracles of Elohim. What is the oracle of Elohim? Those are the words that come out of Yehovah's mouth. Words like this. And Yehovah said to Moses, Hayah, Hayah. I am who I am. That's not his name. The name is in the next verse. Moreover, Elohim said to Moses, thus you shall say to Israel's seed, Yehovah, Elohim of your fathers, Abraham's Elohim, Isaac's Elohim, Jacob's Elohim has sent me to you. This is my name. Yehovah is his name. Most have no clue what his name is. Sorry about that. Most have no clue what Yehovah's name is. We're going to see today the Elohim of Egypt says, I do not know Yehovah. How many people in the United States could say, I don't know Yehovah? And you know what? They don't know Yehovah. They don't know what makes him happy, what makes him sad. They don't know that he's a jealous Elohim. They don't know that he's the Savior. They don't know that we swear in his name. That's the second commandment. No, the third commandment. Taking his name in vain. We don't take his name in vain. What we say he does, because what he says, he does. Well, we talked about this last week. Went through chapter 3, and we finished chapter 3. Actually, we went through the end of chapter 2, where we talked about Moses taking Zipporah and having a son. Only one son. Didn't talk about Eleazar. Then we went through chapter 3, and we talked about the name of Yehovah. We saw that he's going to do some things. I will, here, so I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my wonders. I will do it in its midst, which I will do in its midst. And after that, he will let you go. Well, he just got through saying right here, but I am sure that the king of Egypt will not let you go. This is right after Moses is going to talk. He says, go talk to the king of Egypt. Tell him this. I am who I am. Yehovah is my name. I think he even said, did he say it here? Not yet. I guess he's going to say that in the next chapter, which we're going to talk about today. He says, I will not let you go. He will not let you go. But he says, I will get you out. I will give this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And it shall be when you go that you shall not go empty-handed. Well, glory. This is Yehovah talking to Moses. Well, now we're going to see, actually we did see it last week, that Yehovah met Moses on the mountain. What is that in your hand? Remember, he had the rod of Elohim. We saw that 2 weeks ago. Took the rod of Elohim, had Yehovah's name on it, from Jethro's garden. Well, the rod of Elohim is the one who holds it, speaks for Yehovah. I use the word Yehovah. What is his name? What were we just reading? Yehovah is my name. Here it is, number 3. I want to point it out to you again. Moreover, Elohim said, thus say to Israel, Yehovah, Elohim, this is my name forever. This is so interesting. I missed this last week, I think. When it says, this is my name forever, look what it says. It says this. Whoops, I got the wrong verse. Let me go back. Well, actually, I have it in my notes. Let me just go to my notes. It's easier. You probably see it faster, too. Where is it? Here it is. My name forever. Here it is down here. This is my name, Shami, Shem. Shem is name. Shemi is my name forever. The word they use for there is the car. But then it says to all generations. And when they say to all generations, it uses the same word twice. Dor. When Yehovah repeats himself, we're going to see this many times as we go through the Torah. When he repeats himself, he's doing it on purpose to make a point. This is my name to all generations. Is that still his name? Or is his name the Lord? See, we call him the Lord. We don't even know his name because it's been hidden by capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D throughout the Torah, 3,400, 500 times. It's hidden. And it was hidden, I think, by the Jews, and the Christians have just kept the narrative. They don't look it up. They talk about the Lord all the time. The Lord, the Lord, the Lord. The Lord means Adonai. There are lots of Adonais in the world, but there's only one Yehovah. Now, I use Yehovah. It's Yod Hey Vav Hey. It could be Yahweh. I don't think it is. It could be Yahuwah. I go with Yahweh. And I'm going to stay with Yahweh until Yehovah tells me different, or somebody that's holding the rod of Elohim tells me that I'm wrong. Because I'll trust that man. He's got the rod of Elohim. Not just anybody gets to hold the rod of Elohim. Well, so our next chapter, we started briefly. We read, I think, 16 verses. We were talking about the rod of Elohim. Yehovah gave him a signs. He says what everybody else does. What if they do not believe me? What shall I do? What is that in your hand? Cast it to the ground. Talked about the serpent. We talked about the hand going in, pulling it out, being leprosy, putting it back under his jacket, pulling it back out, not leprosy. Those were signs that he was going to give on to Pharaoh. We left off with him leaving Yehovah and returning to Jethro, Rauah. They used Jethro predominantly. It says, so Moses went and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, please let me go return to my brethren who are in Egypt and see whether they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. You know, we think Jethro, he is a Midianite. Torah calls him the priest of Midian, or a priest of Midian. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I think he's probably more of a prince of Midian. But he has large gates. He's got a prison in his gates that Moses was in for 10 years, and he totally forgot about him. He's got lots of people that live within his gates, and he's getting permission for him to leave his gates. I don't know why Moses was under his authority. I guess because it was his gates. I guess that would make sense. But it says, then Moses took his woman and his sons. You know, up until now in Torah, we don't even know that he has a second son. All they talked about was Gershom in chapter 2. I was a ger in a Nokri land, remember is what it said. That's where he got the name Gershom, is the name of his son. And set them on a donkey. And he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of Elohim, Elohim's rod, in his hand. No, he took the rod of the Elohim in his hand. Ooh, I love it when it says that. And Yehovah said to Moses, look at Yehovah's still talking to him. When you go back to Egypt, see that you do these signs and wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in your hand. But I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. This is the second time that Yehovah is telling Moses that after he talks to Moses, he's going to let him go. They're not leaving. And yet Moses is going to be surprised, we're going to see today, that he didn't let him go. Then you shall say to Pharaoh, oh no, I missed something. Pharaoh, which I put in your hand, wonders before Pharaoh, which I put in your hand, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. Who are the people? Israel are the people. Are Israel. Men people. Spiritually born men people. Then you will say to Pharaoh, thus says Yehovah, Israel, not Jacob's people, Israel is my son. Oh, well, I thought Jesus was his son. Do you know that I'm his son? Michael Didier is my son. I'm Israel. I'm an Ezra man. I keep the Passover every year. Israel is my son, my Bekor. I want you to notice, we're not talking about child. He says son. He says Bekor. There's the words that we're using right here. Son, my son. Ben, Yod, my son. Bekor. Bakari, this is Bakari, my firstborn. There are no female Bakors. None. So we're talking about specifically men. Now the men have wives, they have daughters, they have female servants. But none of them are Bens. None of them are Bekors. See, we gotta go deeper. We've learned lies by learning about the children of Israel. Oh, Father, forgive us. We are so dumbed down because we don't know the difference. We've never looked. We've never searched it out. How does a man become Yehovah's Bakor? Israel is my son. Is everybody among Jacob's seed his son? No. All of Israel who has circumcised themselves, hopefully they did that long ago when they were 6 days old. 8 days old? It was 8 days old. Got circumcised. When they kept the Passover, they became Ezra men, his Bekor. You must be born again. This is what it's all about. We're going to find it out when we get to Exodus 12. This is what Yeshua was talking about when he said you must be born again. He said it on Passover. Or at least during the week of Passover. But we are blind to it because we don't read chapter 2. We only read chapter 3. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a rant. I'm sorry. You know what? We've learned lies. When we talk about my son, this is my son. You know, Israel is more than one. But Israel is his son. It's the plural he. The man-child that we hear about in the end of Isaiah and also in Revelation. The man-child. Yehovah's son serves and has covenant only with Yehovah, not with any other Elohim. Just Yehovah. This is why the Ezra men went up to the mountain and got the 10 commandments. What was the first commandment? Here it is right here. Israel is a spiritually born, I guess I don't have it. Israel is a spiritually born man, born group of men who serve only Yehovah. We can't serve the Elohim of the land and be Yehovah's people. This is what we think. We think, because of misinterpretation of the New Testament, that somehow when we obey the Elohim of the land, that we're obeying Yehovah. You're deluded. This is what he's talking about. Look at, here's the first commandment right here. Let me just go to it. And Elohim spoke all these words, saying, I am Yehovah thy Elohim, who brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other Elohim existing before my face. That's literally what it's saying. No other Elohim existing before my face. You can't serve one Elohim and say you serve the other one. It doesn't work like that. You either keep the commandments, the statutes, the judgments of one Elohim, or you try to keep the commandments, statutes, and judgments of another Elohim. One or the other. That's why you got to leave this country of your birth and join yourself to Jehovah's people to become a ger. And once you're a ger, then you can be circumcised, can keep the Passover, and become the Ezra and become Israel. Israel, to Jacob's seed, really, are not going to leave Egypt until they keep the Passover. Then they're going to leave. And there's going to be some Gerim who are going to come with them. That's the mixed multitude. But it's Israel that's leaving his son to serve him. Well, let me go back. Here we are. Then you shall say to Pharaoh. No, where were we? That was... for... Where were we just reading about that? Oh, brethren. Did I jump someplace? Oh, here it is, 22. Yeah, this is where we were at. I'm sorry. So I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. If you refuse to let him go, indeed, I will kill your son, your firstborn, your Bekor. Again, we're talking about men. And it came to pass on the way at the encampment. Remember, this is Moses and Zipporah and the two sons. They're leaving. They now are coming to an encampment. That Yehovah met him and sought to kill him. What? Yehovah is trying to kill Moses? Zipporah is going to save his life. Watch what happens. By the way, Yasher says it was an inn. I think it was an encampment. I think they probably set up tents and they were sleeping in the tents. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at Moses' feet. And said, surely you are a husband. What's the word they use for that? I don't see it right offhand here. You are a husband of blood to me. Does that sound like it's negative? Or is it positive? Look what the next verse says. Well, we can read with the note here. Actually, we're going to go through this today. This is my covenant, which you should. Okay. Moses hadn't circumcised his son. We got to remember this. Let's go back. This is going to be in 79. Actually, do we have? Remember Gershom, we talked about this last week in 78, that Moses did not circumcise Gershom because Jethro, told him not to. This is where the problem is. And then we saw in Yasher last week also that Eliezer was circumcised. So why wasn't Gershom? So now, this is what it says. I don't want to read that. We're talking about this right now. This is my covenant, which you shall keep between me and you and your seed after you. This is from Genesis 17. Your seed after you. Every male among you shall be circumcised, and you shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskins. And it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and you. He who is 8 days old, there it is, 8 days old, among you shall be circumcised, every male in your generation. He who is born in your house or bought with money. From any foreigner, then the car. Always look up those words, find out what they say. Who is not your seed. He who is born in your house. And he who is bought with your money must be circumcised. Remember, the servant who is bought with money is going to be your servant perpetually. His servants are going to be, or his children are going to be your servants. Must be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And every exposed male, this usually says every uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh. Does that make any sense to you? Think about it. Every uncircumcised male who is not circumcised in the flesh. A little bit redundant? No, every exposed male is what it literally says. Who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, that person shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. This is why Moses is in trouble. And Zipporah is actually doing him a favor. here, this is another translation of the same verse. So Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it down at his feet and said, surely a bridegroom by right of blood art thou to me. Could this be actually a compliment? Moses would have been kicked out of Israel if his son was uncircumcised. She actually is doing him a favor. And look what the very next verse says. It says, so he let him go. Who's he? Moses let Gershom go. It sounds like Zipporah circumcised Gershom while Moses held on to him. Then she said, you are a husband of blood because of the circumcision. Surely you are a husband of blood to me. A husband of blood may be a very good thing. We tend to think it's a very bad thing, I think. Does she sound angry at him? You know, this scene, we don't even see it in Yasher. Why is that? No, actually, we do see it in Yasher. What don't we see? We don't see her saying, surely you are a husband of blood to me. Watch when we read it today. Moses was a husband who was now part of the covenant. That is what every woman needs if he is, she is. Wayne, we've talked about your sons not being circumcised and how that can be a problem. It's every one of your household needs to be circumcised. I guess if they're not in your household, then maybe it's not an issue. Something to think about. Anyway. And Yehovah said to Aaron, look at, this is the scene change, isn't it? All of a sudden, Moses was talking Yehovah was talking to Moses, and they were on their journey from Midian, I think going towards Sinai. It's kind of on the way. And now it says, and Yehovah spoke to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So he went and met him in the Elohim's mountain and kissed him. He met him in the Elohim's mountain. Again, same word, Ha-Elohim. Met him at Ha-Elohim's mountain. So Moses told Aaron all the words of Yehovah who sent him and all the signs which he was commanded. Set, that's the word shalach. Two things that Moses has representing his authority is the rod of Elohim and the fact that Yehovah has shalached him, sent him to speak on his behalf. What Moses says, Yehovah says. What Moses does, Yehovah does. Well, it says, then Moses and Aaron, here they're changing the subject again. Look at this. Here we are again. Another subject change. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together the elders of Israel's seed. They were in the mountain of Elohim. So he went and met him on the Elohim's mountain and kissed him. The very next verse, 2 verses away, they're now in Egypt. Then Moses and Aaron went and gathered together all of Israel's seed's elders. But suddenly we're in Egypt. Where did Zipporah and her sons go? Yasher tells us. Torah doesn't tell us. She's just simply gone. We don't know what happened to her. We're going to find out today. And Aaron spoke all the words which Yehovah had spoken to Moses. Then he did the signs in the sight of the people. Now, he's doing this in the sight of the people. He's not doing this in the sight of Pharaoh yet. That's coming. So the people believed. And when they heard that Yehovah had visited Israel's seed and that he looked on their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshiped. They have been under great stress. Well, here we're going to see it in Yasher right now. This is where we left off in Yasher. Uh, 78. No, we want to go to 79. All right. Here we are. Okay. 79, here's where we left off. It says, and Yehovah was jealous of his people and his inheritance, and heard their voice, and he resolved to take care of them, to take them out of the affliction of Egypt, to give them the land of Canaan as a possession. He heard Israel's cries. Here, the verse before that, and Yehovah heard the cries of Israel's seed and saw the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. So now we're finally ready to move on to chapter 79 of Yasher. And it wasn't those days. Moses was feeding the flock of Raul. They call him the Raul here, not Jesse. What did they call him? Jethro. And in those days, Moses was feeding the flock of Raul, the Midianites. His father-in-law, beyond the wilderness of Sin. Where is that? And the stick, the rod of Elohim, which he took from his father-in-law, was in his hand. Let's talk about where this is at. I'm guessing that, well, here's the wilderness of Sin. Sin is what we're talking about right here. Beyond it. All the way down to Mount Sinai. This is where they're at right now. Jabal al-Las. Midian is probably down in this area. Dedan, who knows? We don't really know. But I'm guessing it's in this part of the world is where Midian is at. And it came to pass one day that a kid of the goats strayed from the flock, and Moses pursued it. And it came to Elohim's mountain, to Horeb. And when he came to Horeb, remember, is a group of mountains. The rock at Horeb is in that vicinity. And when he came to Horeb, Yehovah appeared unto him in the bush. And he found the bush burning with fire, but the fire had no power to consume it. And Moses was greatly astonished at the sight, wherefore the bush was not consumed. And he approached to see this mighty thing. And Yehovah called unto Moses out of the fire and commanded him to go down to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to send Israel's seed from his service. And Yehovah said unto Moses, go return to Egypt, for all those men who sought thy life are dead. And thou shalt speak unto Pharaoh to send forth Israel's seed from his land. And Yehovah showed him to do signs and wonders in Egypt before the eyes of Pharaoh and the eyes of his subjects, in order that they might believe that Yehovah has sent him before the eyes of Pharaoh and before the eyes of his subjects. I wonder if Israel is his subjects. Yes, they are right now, aren't they? And Moses hearkened to all that Yehovah had commanded him. And he returned to his father-in-law and told him the thing. You know, the thing.
Hey, Michael.
Yes.
Your screen's blank. The share screen.
Oh, no. It shouldn't be.
I can see it.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's like last time. Okay.
yeah, I think you, Wayne. Maybe try restarting it. So I think it's funny. It says, I returned to his father-in-law and told him the thing. Sounds like something Biden would say, the thing. You know, the thing. And Raul said to him, go in peace. Again, it's kind of him asking Raul, Jethro, whether he can leave. And Moses rose up to go to Egypt. And he took his woman and sons, Yeladim, with him. And he was at an inn in the road. And an angel, and Yehovah's angel, remember it was Yehovah in Torah, Yehovah's angel came down and sought an occasion against him. And he wished to kill him on account of his firstborn son because he had not circumcised him and had transgressed the covenant. Remember, I just read you the covenant in Genesis 17, which Yehovah had made with Abraham. For Moses had hearkened to the words of his father-in-law, which had spoken to him not to circumcise his firstborn son. Therefore he circumcised him not. And Zipporah saw Yehovah's angel seeking an occasion against Moses. Was this a man? Remember, oftentimes when we talk about Yehovah's angels, we're talking about men. Was there a man there that was seeking an occasion that she realized was an angel of Yehovah or a messenger of Yehovah? Maybe. Zipporah saw Yehovah's messenger, Melech, seeking an occasion against Moses, and she knew that this thing was owing to his not having circumcised her son Gershom. Zipporah hastened and took sharp rock stones that were there. And she circumcised her son and delivered her husband and her son from the hand of Yehovah's messenger. See, there's nothing about the bloody husband to me. And Aaron ben Amram, see, now here's a scene change again. The brother of Moses was in Egypt, walking at the riverside on that day. And Yehovah appeared to him in that place, and he said to him, go now towards Moses in the wilderness, and he went, and he met him in the Elohim's mountain, and he kissed him. And Moses lifted up his eyes and saw Zipporah, Moses' woman, and her Yeladim, her sons. And he said unto Moses, who are these unto thee? And Moses said unto him, they are my wife, my woman, and sons, which Yehovah gave me in Midian. And the thing grieved Aaron on account of the woman and her sons. Why? I think that dragging a woman and a couple infants is too much baggage for what they need to do. Could that be? Could the woman and the children be used against Moses? I think Aaron was really wise. Look at what he does. And Aaron said to Moses, send away the woman and her sons, the Yeladim, that they may go to her father's house. And Moses hearkened unto the words of Aaron and did so. And Zipporah returned with her Yeladim, her sons, and they went to the house of Raul and remained there until the time arrived when Yehovah had visited his people and brought them forth from Egypt, from the hand of Moses. Well, we're going to finish this chapter first, but I want to read chapter 5 next. Or we're going to finish this chapter today, but we're going to finish chapter 5 next. So let's go to chapter 5. Here we are. Whoops, that's not it. This is what we want. Chapter 5. Afterwards, Moses and Aaron went and told Pharaoh Did he just meet with the elders? Remember, we just saw that in chapter 4. He met with the elders. Now they're going to meet with Pharaoh. And it seemed to me that Yehovah at one point told Moses and the elders to meet with Pharaoh. And it's only going to be Moses and Aaron that are going to meet with Pharaoh, both times here and in Yasher. Afterwards, Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, "Thus says Yehovah, Elohim of Israel, Israel's Elohim. Let my people go that they may hold a feast to me in the wilderness." The word feast is this word here, kagag, festival. This says, look at it. They went in and told Pharaoh. Do you just walk into Pharaoh? In Torah, they just walked in, didn't they? We're going to see in Yasher, there's a little bit more to this story. Let my people go. Israel is Yehovah's people, not Pharaoh's people. Right now, they're Pharaoh's people, but as soon as they leave their kingdom, get circumcised, keep the Passover, they become Yehovah's people. And now they're only going to serve Yehovah. He wants them to serve him. Hold a feast to me in the wilderness. And Yehovah said, "Who is Yehovah?" No, and Pharaoh said, "Who is Yehovah, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go?" Listen to what he says. "I do not know Yehovah, nor will I let Israel go." You know, I would guess that most of the world does not know Yehovah. They don't know they're slaves yet. I think they're starting to realize it these days. But there's an awful lot that don't. But they're certainly not Yehovah's. They don't know Yehovah. So they said, this is Moses' answer to him saying, "I don't know Yehovah. I will not let Israel go." So they said, the Hebrews Elohim has met with us. Please let us go 3 days' journey into the desert and slaughter to Yehovah our Elohim, lest he fall upon us with pestilence and with sword. You know, this is really loaded. We wrote it here. So they said, the Hebrews Elohim. Here it is, Ibrahim, or Elohim. Ibrahim. I forget how you say it. It's the plural form of Hebrew. The Hebrews Elohim has met with us. Please let us go 3 days journey into the desert and slaughter. Remember, slaughter is always something that's not, they translate it as sacrifice. You get these false images in your head, find out what it says when it actually says sacrifice, find out if it really is slaughter. I guarantee you it's almost always going to be something besides sacrifice. There really is no word for sacrifice in Torah. It's all translated differently. A slaughter is something that we're going to kill and eat. You do that every day. Except you don't slaughter it. The butcher does. That we may slaughter to Yehovah our Elohim, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with sword. Fall upon us. Fall upon us. Judgment always begins with those who say there is people, but do not do as he requires. There's a whole world right now that says they're the Lord's people, but they don't know him. They don't know his name. They certainly don't do anything that he says. Well, look what it says in Ezekiel. Now, the glory of Israel's Elohim had gone up from the cherub, where it had been, to the threshold of the temple. He's leaving the temple. And he called to the man clothed with linen. This is probably a priest or an angel, who had the writer's incarnate on his side, incarnate at his side. And Yehovah said to him, go throughout the midst of the city, through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the forehead of the men who sigh and cry over the abominations that are done within it. Go after him through the city and kill. Do not let your eye spare, nor have any pity. Utterly slay old and young men, maidens and young children and women. But do not come near anyone who has the mark, and begin in my sanctuary. So they began with the elders who were before the temple. Do you hear what's going on? Judgment starts in Yehovah's house. It starts with the people who say they're his, but aren't. That's what Yom Kippurim is all about. The two goats, they look alike. But one doesn't obey Yehovah, and the other one does. Yehovah knows their heart. They look good on the outside, but Yehovah knows the heart. Remember, the casting of the die, what is the word? We were talking about that. Do you remember the casting of the lot? I know you would have gotten it. The casting of the lot. That's what that's all about, is getting Yehovah's will, because he knows he's going to make the decision. Lest he fall upon us with pestilence and the sword. Then, there we go. Then the king of Egypt said to them, remember, we're talking about the king of Egypt. Who is he? Yul Brynner type guy? No, he's Anakim. He's that little short guy. Less than 24 inches tall. Big beard. Down to his feet. Big fat guy. That's who he's talking to. And the king of Egypt said to them, Moses and Aaron, why do you take the people from their work? Get back to your labor. And Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are many now, and you make them Shabbat from their labor. You make them Sabbath from their labor. So the same day Pharaoh commanded the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, you shall no longer give the people straw to make bricks as before. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. There's some things that we need to talk about here. First of all, we got to understand that the taskmasters work for Pharaoh. The officers of the people, those are men of Israel who have been appointed as overseers of the people. You shall no longer give straw or make bricks as before. Remember, we saw in Yasher last week that when Anakim became Pharaoh, because his father said that Israel was slackers, he made life harder for Israel by not giving them straw. So now it's looking like in Torah that it's Moses' fault that they're not getting straw. Well, I wonder if that's the case. And I think we need to talk about straw just a little bit. we're going to see verse 12 of this while we're talking about straw. I'm going to bring it up. It's going to say, so the people were scattered abroad throughout the land of Egypt to gather stubble instead of straw. I put chaff and stubble are the epitome of seeking after temporary things, which will burn up in the judgment, as opposed to eternal things, which we should store up for ourselves in heaven. Doing righteousness has eternal consequences. Finding out how much money you can make on a daily basis is the chaff and the stubble that's going to burn up. You can't take it with you. What you teach to your sons and your sons' sons about obeying Yehovah, that you're going to take with you, because they can become Ezra men as well and live in eternity. Let's keep moving. Oh, in Yasher, Pharaoh, Anakim had already done this thing to Israel's seed before him. Yeah, he did. All right. 8. And you shall lay on them the quota of bricks, which they made before. You shall not reduce it, for they are idle. Therefore they cry out, saying, Let us go and slaughter to our Elohim. Our Elohim. Let more be laid on the men. Let more work be laid on the men, not the ladies. This is not about the ladies. This is about the men. The men are serving Yehovah. They are his Evadim. Evadim. Yeah, I believe it. Evadim. Let more work be laid on the men. This is ha-nashim. Ha-anashim. This is the plural of ish, the men. This is men, not the ladies. Look at what it says, that they may labor in it, and let them not regard false words. Conspiracy theories. Don't let them regard conspiracy theories. And the taskmasters, remember this is Pharaoh's people, of the people and their officers, went out and spoke to the people, saying, Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go get yourself straw where you can find it. Yet none of your work will be reduced. So the people were scattered abroad throughout the land of Egypt to gather stubble instead of straw. And the taskmasters forced them. Did I have another note on that? Sounds like where we are today, scattered throughout the world. The land of Egypt, the world, that's the land of Egypt. Gathering straw and stubble, things that will burn up in the end. Keep them busy so they don't have time to think. Yeah, we need to become thinkers, questioners, seekers. And the taskmasters forced them to hurry, saying, Fulfill your work, your daily quota, as when there was straw. Also the officers of Israel's seed, whom the taskmasters who had set over them were beaten. The officers are being beaten. You're not making them move fast enough. And we're asked, why have you not fulfilled your task in making bricks, both yesterday and today as before? And the officers of Israel's seed came and cried to Pharaoh, saying, Why are you dealing thus with your servants? There it is, Aved, male servants. Evadim is servants. Aved is servant. Evadim is servants. These servants were making their plea to their master and Elohim, Pharaoh. We were supposed to be servants of Yehovah. All the officers and most of Israel's seed were Pharaoh's servants, except the Levites. Remember, the Levites never served Pharaoh. There is no straw given to your servants. They're still complaining to Pharaoh. There is no straw given to your servants. And they say to us, make bricks. And indeed, your servants are beaten, but the fault is thy own people. This color on the thy is not for officers, it's for a singular, is thy own people. They're talking to Pharaoh. Thy own people. They are blaming Pharaoh's people, not Pharaoh. Blaming him would be dangerous. Yeah, that's exactly right. But he said, you are idle. Therefore you say, let us go and slaughter to Yehovah. Therefore go now and work. Therefore go now and work. For no straw shall be given you, yet you shall deliver the quota of bricks. And the officers of Israel's seed saw that they were in trouble after it was said, you shall not reduce any bricks from your daily quota. Then they came out from Pharaoh. Then, as they came out from Pharaoh, they met Moses and Aaron, who stood there to meet them. And they said to them, let Yehovah look on you and judge, because you have made us abhorrent in the sight of Pharaoh and in the sight of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to kill us. So now look what it says. So Moses returned to Yehovah and said, Yehovah, why have you brought trouble on the people? Why is it you have sent me? Well, he just told him twice in 2 different chapters. Like that makes any difference, but he told him twice that he would not let him go. He told him, I'm not going to let him go. Said it in 3, said it in 4. For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people. Neither have you delivered your people at all. Come on, Yehovah. What's the story? Well, we're going to return to Yasher, finish that chapter we started, and we're going to quit after this chapter. And Moses and Aaron came to Egypt, to the community of Israel's seed, and they spoke to them all the words of Yehovah. And the people rejoiced, and exceeding great rejoicing. They were thrilled to see that Yehovah heard from them, and they saw the signs, and they loved it. And Moses and Aaron rose up early the next morning, and they went to the house of Pharaoh. I thought they were supposed to go with the elders. And they took in their hands the rod of Elohim. Remember, in chapter 1 of 4, maybe it was 5. I guess it was 5. It says they just walked into the temple. Just walked up to him. I said, well, do you just walk in? Well, here's what happened. Here's the rest of the story. And Moses and Aaron rose up early in the next morning, and they went to the house of Pharaoh. And they took in their hands the rod of Elohim, the rod of the Elohim, the Elohim's rod. Let's say it like that. And when they came to the king's gate, 2 young lions were confined there with iron instruments. And no person went out or came in from before them unless those whom the king ordered to come, when the conjurers came and withdrew the lions from their incantations and brought them to the king. And Moses hastened and lifted up the rod upon the lions, and he loosed them. And Moses and Aaron came to the king's house, and the lions came with them with joy. And they followed them and rejoiced as dogs rejoice over their master when he comes in from the field. Wouldn't that have been a sight? Boy, I'd sure like to see that. And when Pharaoh saw this thing, he was astonished at it. And he was greatly terrified. Yeah, you think he would be? Remember, this little Pharaoh, the dogs are bigger than he is. I mean, the lions are bigger than he is. You think he'd be terrified? At the report, for their appearance was like the appearance of Elohim's seed. Elohim's seed. Well, this is interesting here. When Moses was born, there was a light. Do all of Elohim's sons operate at a higher frequency than the rest of those on the earth? I wonder. I'd love to see my frequency. I remember going to a chiropractor, naturopath recently, within the last 5 years. And she was able to look at our auras. And I was surprised. She was surprised to see my aura, that it was much bigger than most people's. I wonder if that happens with all of Yehovah's sons, that they operate at a higher frequency. Well, we don't know much about frequency these days, but we're going to learn more in future times here. Moses is before a short, fat, ugly king with a long beard. Wow, there's a picture. Even the lions are taller than Pharaoh. He is like kibbles and bits to them. He is. Tasty little meal. And Pharaoh said to Moses, what do you require? And they answered him, saying, Yehovah, the Hebrews' Elohim, has sent us to thee to say, send forth thy people that they may serve me. This is exactly what he said. It's just different words. Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I say to you, let my son go that he may serve me. He didn't have the rest of it. And when Pharaoh heard their words, he was greatly terrified before them. And he said to them, go today, come back to me tomorrow. And they did according to the word of the king. Yeah, he doesn't know what to say, so he's going to stall. He's got to talk to his counselors, and that's what he's going to do. He sent them away. They're going to come back tomorrow. And when they had gone, Pharaoh sent for Balaam, he's back again, the magician, and Janus, and Jambres, his sons. This is the first time. It has always said Balaam and his sons. This is the first time that it's actually named his sons. Remember, Balaam had Janus and Jambres. Janus is going to have Beor, and Beor is going to have another Balaam. So there's Balaam ben Beor, Janus ben Beor, Balaam ben Janus, and Balaam ben Beor again. Oh, it gets really confusing if you don't put it all together. And all the magicians and conjurers and counselors which belonged to the king, and they all came and sat before the king. Here, my note here. I said, ugh, Balaam and his sons are back in Egypt. Moses must seem like a curse to them. First, Balaam tried to kill him in the crown incident when Moses was a little boy, 2 years old or 3 years old. But he couldn't. Then Moses drove him out of Egypt, then out of Cush. And here they are. Now they're back in Egypt. And here comes Moses again. They can't get rid of Moses. And the king told them all the words which Moses and his brother Aaron had spoken to him. And the magicians said to the king, but how came the men to thee on account of the lions which were confined at the gate? And the king said, because they lifted up their rod against the lions and loosed them and came to me. And the lions also rejoiced at them as a dog rejoices to meet his master. And Balaam ben Beor, the magician, answered the king, saying, these are none else than magicians like ourselves. We can do it too. Excuse me. Now, therefore, send for them and let them come, and we will try them. And the king did so. And in the morning, Pharaoh sent for Moses and Aaron to come before the king. And they took the Elohim's rod and came to the king and spoke to him. Says Yehovah, the Hebrews' Elohim, send my people that they may serve me. And the king said to them, but who will believe you when you believe that you, let me try that again. The king said to them, but who will believe you that you are Elohim's messengers, and that you came to me by his order? Now, therefore, give us a wonder or a sign. This is what all the people of the world want. They always want signs and wonders. You know, I didn't have a sign and a wonder when I turned to Yehovah. I simply saw the truth of his word, and I had to turn to Yehovah. Now, therefore, give us signs and wonders in this matter, and then the words which you speak will be believed. Well, that's certainly not going to happen. And Aaron hastened and threw the rod out of his hand. Look at it, it's Aaron who threw it. Threw the rod out of his hand before Pharaoh and before his servants. And the rod turned into a serpent. And the sorcerers saw this, and they cast each man his rod upon the ground, and they became serpents. And the serpent of Aaron's rod lifted up his head and opened its mouth to swallow the rods of the magicians. It didn't, but they were going to. And Balaam the magician answered and said, this thing has been from days of old, that the serpent should swallow its fellow, and that living things devour each other. It would be no big deal if the serpent swallowed another serpent. Now, therefore, restore it to a rod as it was at first, and we will also restore our rods as they were at first. And if thy rod shall swallow our rods, then shall we know that Yehovah's spirit is in thee. And if not, thou art only an artificer, like unto us, a faker. And Aaron hastened and stretched forth his hand and caught hold of the serpent's tail, and it became a rod in his hand. And the sorcerers did the like with their rods, and they got hold each man of the tail of his serpent, and they became rods as at first. And when they were restored to rods, the rod of Aaron swallowed up their rods. Well, we do not see that in Torah, do we? Isn't that a far greater miracle that the rod of Aaron is going to swallow up their rods? And when the king saw this thing, remember, he said, show us a sign and we'll believe. They don't believe. And when the king saw this thing, he ordered the book of records that relates to the kings of Egypt to be brought. And they brought the book of records, the chronicles of the kings of Egypt, in which all the idols of Egypt were inscribed. For they thought of finding therein the name of Yehovah, who they found, but they found it not. Look at that. They're looking for the name of Yehovah, and they're actually using the name Yehovah to do it. There's not one time in Torah, in Yasher, that we're going to see this, or maybe there's going to be another time, but to date, this is the first time Yehovah's name is actually being used. Now, I know, that wherever they say the Lord, they're covering up Yehovah. That's why I always read it as Yehovah. But isn't this interesting? This is the first time that Yehovah's name is actually used. All the times I have read Yehovah, every time it has said the Lord. Every time. Every time it has said Yehovah. It was being translated incorrectly, but the truth finally surfaces. I think that's so very interesting. And Pharaoh said to Moses and Aaron, behold, I have not found the name of your Elohim written in this book. and his name I do not know. Who is Yehovah? I do not know him. And the counselors and the wise men answered the king, we have heard that the Hebrews Elohim is a son of the wise, a son of an ancient king, the son of ancient kings. And Pharaoh turned to Moses and Aaron and said, I know not Yehovah. I do not know Yehovah, whom you have declared, neither will I send his people. Yeah, this is where we see it again. I do not know Yehovah, nor will I let his people go. Well, look at what Moses and Aaron say. And they answered and said to the king, Yehovah, Elohim of Elohims. Yehovah is the Elohim of Elohims. Remember, Yehovah, Moses was the Elohim of Aaron. Moses is the Elohim of Pharaoh. But here he's saying Yehovah is Elohim of Elohims. It is his name. And he proclaimed his name over us from the day of our ancestors and sent us, saying, go to Pharaoh and say unto him, send my people, Israel, that they may serve me. Now therefore send us, that we may take a journey for 3 days into the wilderness, and there slaughter to him. For from the days of our going down to Egypt, he has not taken from our hand either olah, there's olah, burnt offering, oblation, this is the minka, the drink offering, or nesek, I guess. And Jacob said this. And Jacob set up a standing pillar in the place where he had spoken to him, standing pillar of stone, and he poured an oblation, a nesek, a drink offering, and poured on the oil. Okay, nesek. I think a nesek is a minka offering too. I may be wrong. And then it says slaughter. Slaughter. Again, we're going to kill something and eat it. And if thou wilt not send us, his anger will be kindled against thee, and he will smite Egypt either with the plague or with the sword. Remember, if he smites thee, Israel's going to get it too, aren't they? Because he already said they were going to be afflicted as well. So they are. And now Egypt's going to be afflicted, and they're going to be afflicted. It's going to be like, 7 times? The first 7 plagues are going to be on Israel, and then the last 3 are going to be on Egypt and Israel, and the last 3 are going to be on just Egypt. If thou wilt not send us, his anger will be kindled against thee, and he will smite Egypt either with plague or with sword. And Pharaoh said to them, tell me now his power and his might, that they might, and they said to him, he created the heaven and the earth, the seas and all the fishes. He formed the light, created the darkness, caused rain upon the earth and watered it, and made the herbage and the grass to sprout. He created man and beast and animals of the forest, the birds of the air, the fish of the sea, and by his mouth they live and die. Look at this. This is Balaam. Remember, I just told you the origin, the lineage of Balaam. Beor, Balaam, Jannes, Beor, Balaam. Here is Balaam's, the current Balaam's, Balaam's great-grandson is what he's going to say 40 years from now. And look at what he says. Elohim is not a man that he should lie, nor a son of man that he should repent. Has he said, and he will not do? Or has he spoken, and he will not make it good? No, what Yehovah says, he does. Balaam finally is understanding that. Surely he created thee in thy mother's womb, and put thee and put in thee the spirit of life. They say breath, the spirit of life, and reared thee and placed thee upon the royal throne of Egypt. And he will take thy spirit, thy breath, and soul from thee and return thee to the ground whence thou was taken. Here's what it says in Psalms. You hide your face. They are troubled. You take away their spirit, and they die and return to the dust. This is the same thing. The anger of the king was kindled against their words. And he said to them, but who amongst all of the Elohim, the nation's Elohims, can do this? My river is my own. I have made it for myself. Well, remember, that's going to be the first plague, is the river turning to blood. And he drove them from him. And he ordered the labor upon Israel to be more severe than it was yesterday and before. And Moses and Aaron went out from the king's presence, and they saw Israel's seed in an evil condition, for the taskmasters had made their labor exceedingly heavy. And Moses returned to Yehovah and said, why hast thou ill-treated thy people? For since I came to speak to Pharaoh, what thou didst send me for, he has exceedingly ill-used Israel's seed. Well, this is what we talked about before. He told him that he wasn't going to listen to him. Pharaoh wasn't going to listen to him. And Yehovah said to Moses, behold, thou wilt see that with an outstretched hand and heavy plagues, Pharaoh will send Israel's seed from his land. This is the first time I realized what Yehovah's name actually meant. I've spoken it and I will perform it. Here it is. I will put my spirit on you and you will live. And I will place you in your own land. Then you shall know that I, listen, he says his name first, I, Yehovah, have spoken it and performed it, says Yehovah. He uses his name on both ends of it, and it means what he says he will do. This is why we swear in Yehovah's name. What we say, we better do. Don't take his name in vain. And Moses and Aaron dwelt among their brethren, Israel's seed in Egypt. And as for Israel's seed, the Egyptians embittered their lives with heavy work, which they imposed upon them. Well, this is where we're going to stop today. We've got an hour and 17 minutes. You guys, thank you so much for joining me. We'll pick it up next time. Have a wonderful day, week.